Marcus Thompson had always been different from other kids in his small Ohio town. While his classmates played video games and watched cartoons, he spent hours studying old war documentaries and reading military history books at the local library. His bedroom walls were covered with pictures of naval ships, submarines, and famous admirals. His grandfather, who had served in World War II, would tell him stories about the brave sailors who protected merchant ships crossing dangerous waters. At school, Marcus was known as the quiet kid who knew everything about military strategy and naval warfare. His teachers often called on him when they needed someone to explain historical battles or military tactics. But this knowledge also made him a target for bullies who thought he was trying too hard to be smart. They would push him around and call him names, saying he was just pretending to know things to get attention. Despite the teasing, Marcus never stopped learning. He memorized the names of every major naval battle, knew the specifications of dozens of warships, and could explain complex military strategies that even some adults found confusing. His dream was to join the Navy someday and serve his country just like his grandfather had done decades before. When Marcus turned 16, something happened that would change his life forever. While walking home from the library one evening, he noticed an elderly man sitting on a park bench looking confused and lost. The man was wearing an old military jacket covered with faded medals and ribbons. Marcus approached him carefully and asked if he needed help. The man looked up with tired eyes and said his name was Captain William Morrison, retired from the United States Navy. He explained that he had gotten lost while visiting the town and couldn't remember how to get back to his hotel. Marcus noticed something strange about the captain's story. The medals on his jacket didn't match the stories he was telling about his service. Some of the ribbons were from different wars, and others were displayed in the wrong order according to military protocol. Marcus felt torn between wanting to help the old man and feeling suspicious about his claims. He decided to walk the captain to his hotel, listening carefully to more stories that didn't seem to add up. The captain claimed to have served in battles that Marcus knew had happened at different times, with different ships in different parts of the world. Over the next few weeks, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Captain Morrison. He did research at the library and online, trying to verify the stories he had heard. What he discovered shocked him. There was no record of a Captain William Morrison serving in the Navy during the time periods he had mentioned. The battles he described had happened, but the details were all wrong. It seemed like the old man was making up his military service. Marcus faced a difficult decision. Should he expose the captain as someone who was lying about being a war hero, or should he keep quiet and let the man continue telling his false stories? Marcus knew that stolen valor, pretending to have military service and honors you never earned, was not only morally wrong but also illegal in many cases. After days of thinking about it, Marcus decided he had to do something. He couldn't let someone dishonor the memory of real veterans by pretending to be one of them. He wrote a detailed letter to the local newspaper, explaining what he had discovered about Captain Morrison. He included all the evidence he had found, showing how the man's stories didn't match historical records. The letter was published in the newspaper's weekend edition under the headline, "Local Teen Exposes Fake War Hero." The story spread quickly through the small town. People were shocked to learn that the friendly old man they had been treating with respect was apparently lying about his military service. Some praised Marcus for his detective work and for standing up for real veterans. But not everyone was happy with what Marcus had done. Many people in the town turned against him, calling him cruel and heartless for exposing an elderly man. They said he should have minded his own business and left the captain alone. Some accused Marcus of just wanting attention and trying to show off his knowledge. The bullying at school got worse, with kids saying he was a troublemaker who liked to hurt people. The situation became even more complicated when Captain Morrison disappeared from town without explanation. His hotel room was found empty, and no one knew where he had gone. Some people blamed Marcus for driving the old man away, making him feel even more isolated, and regretted his decision to speak up. Marcus began to doubt himself. Maybe he had been wrong to expose Captain Morrison. Maybe the old man was just confused or had memory problems from his age. The criticism from his neighbors and classmates weighed heavily on him, and he started to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. His parents tried to support him, but even they seemed unsure about whether he had done the right thing. His grandfather, the World War II veteran, was the only person who seemed to understand why Marcus had felt compelled to act. He told Marcus that protecting the honor of military service was important, but he also warned him that doing the right thing wasn't always popular or easy. As weeks passed, Marcus felt more and more like an outcast in his own town. The newspaper article had made him locally famous, but not in a good way. People pointed at him when he walked down the street, whispering about the teenager who had destroyed an old man's reputation. Some called him a fraud himself, saying he was just a kid who thought he knew more than adults. The weight of the community's disapproval began to affect Marcus's grades and his mental health. He started skipping school some days, not wanting to face the constant criticism and suspicious looks from his classmates and teachers. He wondered if his dream of joining the Navy was ruined before it had even really begun. Would the military want someone who had caused so much controversy in his hometown? Marcus's story was far from over, though he didn't know it at the time. The letter he had written and the investigation he had conducted would eventually lead to discoveries that no one in his small Ohio town could have imagined. 3 months after the newspaper article was published, Marcus received an unexpected phone call that would change everything. The voice on the other end identified himself as Commander James Rodriguez from the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Marcus's heart raced as he wondered if he was in trouble for his investigation into Captain Morrison. Commander Rodriguez explained that the Navy had seen the newspaper article and was very interested in Marcus's findings. Rather than being angry, the commander praised Marcus for his thorough research and attention to detail. He asked if Marcus would be willing to meet with him to discuss the case further. Marcus agreed, though he felt nervous about what this meeting might mean. When Commander Rodriguez arrived in town the following week, he brought with him a team of investigators and a surprising revelation. The man Marcus had known as Captain Morrison was actually someone the Navy had been searching for over 2 years. His real name was Robert Kellerman, and he was wanted for multiple cases of stolen valor across several states. The commander explained that Kellerman had been traveling from town to town, pretending to be different military heroes and taking advantage of people's respect for veterans. He would tell false stories about his service, accept free meals at restaurants that honored veterans, and sometimes even collect donations for fake veteran charities. The Navy had been trying to track him down, but he was clever about moving around and changing his story. Marcus learned that his detailed letter to the newspaper had provided investigators with the most comprehensive analysis of Kellerman's deception that they had ever seen. The teenager's knowledge of military history and protocol had allowed him to spot inconsistencies that many adults would have missed. His research had been so thorough that it gave investigators new leads about where Kellerman might have gone next. Commander Rodriguez asked Marcus if he would be willing to help with the ongoing investigation. He explained that the Navy was working with local law enforcement agencies across the region to track down Kellerman and prevent him from continuing his fraudulent activities. Marcus's skills as a researcher and his understanding of military history could be valuable assets to the team. Marcus felt overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events. Just months before, his community had been calling him cruel and heartless for exposing what they thought was a harmless old man. Now the United States Navy was asking for his help in a real criminal investigation. He agreed to assist however he could, though he asked that his involvement be kept quiet to avoid making the situation in his hometown even more difficult. Over the next several weeks, Marcus worked closely with the investigative team. They taught him how to use military databases to verify service records and showed him techniques for spotting forged documents and fake medals. Marcus proved to be a quick learner, and his passion for military history made him an enthusiastic partner in the investigation. The work was exciting, but also demanding. Marcus had to balance his schoolwork with his responsibilities to the investigation, often staying up late to research leads or analyze documents. His parents were proud of his involvement with the Navy, but worried about the stress it was putting on him. The criticism from his community continued, making it even harder to focus on his studies. During his work with the investigators, Marcus discovered that the problem of stolen valor was much bigger than he had realized. Commander Rodriguez showed him files on dozens of cases involving people who had falsely claimed military service or honors. Some were relatively harmless attention seekers, but others were serious criminals who used fake military credentials to gain trust and defraud victims. Marcus learned about the real impact that stolen valor had on genuine veterans and their families. When someone falsely claimed to have served in combat or received honors they never earned, it diminished the real sacrifices that actual service members had made. Veterans who had genuinely risked their lives and suffered trauma in service to their country felt insulted and betrayed by these imposters. The investigation also taught Marcus about the complexities of military justice and law enforcement. He learned how different agencies worked together to solve crimes that crossed state lines, and how challenging it could be to build a strong case against someone who was skilled at deception. The work required patience, attention to detail, and the ability to think several steps ahead of criminals. As the weeks passed, the investigative team received reports of someone matching Kellerman's description, appearing in towns across 3 different states. Each time he was using a slightly different identity and telling different stories about his military service. But thanks to Marcus's initial analysis, investigators were better able to recognize his patterns and methods. Marcus also helped the team develop educational materials to help community members recognize potential cases of stolen valor. He worked with Commander Rodriguez to create simple guides that explained what to look for when someone claimed to have military service. These materials were distributed to veteran organizations, restaurants, and businesses that offered military discounts. The teenager's involvement in the investigation began to change how some people in his community viewed him. While many still criticized him for exposing Captain Morrison, others started to understand that he had actually helped law enforcement catch a real criminal. Some veterans in the area reached out to thank him for protecting the honor of military service. However, the investigation also brought new challenges. Marcus received threatening phone calls from people who supported Kellerman, even after learning about his criminal activities. Some callers accused Marcus of being a troublemaker, who was working with the government to persecute elderly people. Others questioned whether a teenager should be involved in such serious law enforcement work. The pressure of the investigation and the ongoing community criticism began to take a toll on Marcus's mental health. He started having trouble sleeping and found it difficult to concentrate in school. His grades, which had always been excellent, began to slip as he struggled to balance his normal teenage responsibilities. With his work on the case, Commander Rodriguez noticed that Marcus was struggling and arranged for him to speak with a military counselor who specialized in helping people deal with stress and pressure. The counselor helped Marcus understand that what he was experiencing was normal for someone in his situation and taught him strategies for managing the emotional challenges of investigative work. Despite the difficulties, Marcus remained committed to the investigation. He felt a strong sense of responsibility to see the case through to the end and to help protect other communities from falling victim to Kellerman's deceptions. He also began to see his work with the Navy as preparation for his future career in military service. The breakthrough in the case came 6 months after Marcus first met with Commander Rodriguez. The investigative team received a tip from a restaurant owner in Kentucky who had become suspicious of a customer claiming to be a decorated Marine colonel. The man's story had inconsistencies similar to those Marcus had identified. In his original analysis of Kellerman, Marcus was asked to review security camera footage from the restaurant and compare the suspect's appearance and behavior to what he remembered about Captain Morrison. Even though months had passed, Marcus immediately recognized the same person. Kellerman had changed his appearance slightly, dyeing his hair and growing a beard, but his mannerisms and the way he displayed his fake medals were identical. The team quickly coordinated with Kentucky law enforcement to set up surveillance of the restaurant and the hotel where Kellerman was staying. Marcus was invited to participate in the operation via video conference, watching the feeds from the surveillance cameras and helping investigators identify important details that might otherwise be missed. On the night of the arrest, Marcus sat in a conference room at the local FBI field office, surrounded by computer screens showing different camera angles of the hotel. His heart pounded as he watched federal agents and local police move into position. After months of investigation and years of Kellerman evading justice, they were finally about to apprehend him. When the arrest happened, it was surprisingly quick and quiet. Kellerman offered no resistance when agents knocked on his hotel room door and identified themselves. Marcus watched through the surveillance feed as the man he had first encountered on a park bench was led away in handcuffs. The fake medals and ribbons were collected as evidence, along with forged military documents and identification cards. The search of Kellerman's hotel room revealed the full scope of his criminal activities. Investigators found multiple fake military uniforms, dozens of counterfeit medals and ribbons, and forged discharge papers for various fictional military identities. There were also notebooks containing detailed plans for future scams and lists of towns where he intended to operate next. Most disturbing of all, investigators discovered evidence that Kellerman had been collecting donations for fake veteran charities. He had convinced caring citizens in multiple towns to give money that he claimed would help wounded warriors and homeless veterans. Instead, the money had gone directly into his own pocket. The total amount of his fraud was estimated to be over $50,000. Commander Rodriguez called Marcus personally to inform him of the arrest and to thank him for his crucial role in the investigation. The commander explained that without Marcus's initial analysis and continued assistance, Kellerman might have continued his crimes for years longer. The teenager's work had not only led to one arrest, but it also helped investigators understand Kellerman's methods well enough to prevent future victims. The news of Kellerman's arrest spread quickly through Marcus's hometown, dramatically changing how people viewed the teenager's actions. The same newspaper that had published his original letter now ran a front-page story about how a local student had helped the Navy catch a wanted criminal. The article explained the full scope of Kellerman's crimes and Marcus's role in bringing him to justice. Suddenly, many of the people who had criticized Marcus began to see him in a different light. Veteran organizations that had initially been upset about his exposure of Captain Morrison now praised him for protecting the honor of military service. Restaurant owners who had been giving free meals to Kellerman realized they had been victims of fraud and thanked Marcus for stopping the deception. The school principal, who had been concerned about the controversy surrounding Marcus, now invited him to speak to other students about his experience. Marcus gave presentations about the importance of research, critical thinking, and standing up for what you believe is right, even when it's difficult. His story became an inspiration to other students who were interested in law enforcement or military careers. However, the success also brought new challenges. Marcus received interview requests from news reporters and television stations who wanted to tell his story. While he was proud of his work, he felt uncomfortable with the attention and worried about how it might affect his future plans to join the Navy. He preferred to let his actions speak for themselves rather than seeking publicity. Commander Rodriguez helped Marcus navigate the media attention and taught him how to handle interviews professionally. The commander explained that Marcus's story could inspire other young people to pursue careers in law enforcement or military service, and that sharing his experience could help educate the public about the problem of stolen valor. The legal proceedings against Kellerman moved forward quickly. Marcus was asked to testify as a witness in the federal case, explaining how he had first identified the inconsistencies in Kellerman's story and describing his role in the investigation. The teenager felt nervous about testifying in court, but Commander Rodriguez and the prosecuting attorneys prepared him thoroughly for the experience. During his testimony, Marcus calmly and clearly explained his analysis of Kellerman's fake military credentials. He demonstrated his knowledge of military history and protocol, showing the jury exactly how he had identified the fraud. The defense attorneys tried to suggest that Marcus was just a teenager who didn't really understand military matters, but his detailed knowledge and professional demeanor impressed everyone in the courtroom. The judge commended Marcus for his civic responsibility and his commitment to justice. She noted that it was unusual for someone so young to show such dedication to protecting the honor of military service, and she praised his courage in coming forward, despite facing criticism from his community. Kellerman ultimately pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges related to stolen valor and fraud. He was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to the charities and individuals he had defrauded. During his sentencing hearing, the judge specifically mentioned Marcus's role in bringing the case to light and stopping Kellerman's criminal activities. The resolution of the case brought Marcus a sense of closure, but it also marked the beginning of new opportunities. Commander Rodriguez informed him that the Navy had been impressed with his work on the investigation and his potential for a career in military service. The commander suggested that Marcus might be interested in applying for special programs that could help him prepare for advanced roles in naval, intelligence, or criminal investigation. Marcus's high school guidance counselor worked with him to explore scholarship opportunities related to his interest in military service and law enforcement. Several universities offered programs that combined criminal justice studies with military science, providing pathways to careers in military intelligence, federal law enforcement, or military legal affairs. As Marcus's senior year of high school approached, he felt more confident about his future than he had in months. The investigation had been challenging and sometimes overwhelming, but it had also shown him what he was capable of achieving when he applied his knowledge and skills to real-world problems. He had proven to himself and others that age didn't have to be a barrier to making a meaningful contribution to justice and national security. As Marcus entered his senior year of high school, he began the process of applying to join the Navy. His work on the Kellerman investigation had convinced him that he wanted to pursue a career in military intelligence, where he could use his analytical skills and knowledge of military history to serve his country. Commander Rodriguez had become an informal mentor, helping Marcus understand the different career paths available in naval service. The application process was more complex than Marcus had expected. Beyond the standard paperwork and physical fitness requirements, his involvement in a high-profile criminal investigation required additional security clearance procedures. FBI agents conducted thorough background checks, interviewing his teachers, neighbors, and family members about his character and reliability. Some people in Marcus's community were surprised to learn about the extensive investigation into his background. The agents' questions helped spread awareness of just how significant Marcus's contribution to the Kellerman case had been. Many residents who had previously been critical of the teenager began to understand that the Navy considered him valuable enough to warrant special attention and security procedures. During this time, Marcus also received an unexpected invitation that would change his life in ways he never imagined. Commander Rodriguez called to inform him that the Secretary of the Navy wanted to personally recognize his contributions to the Stolen Valor investigation. Marcus would be invited to Washington, D.C. for a special ceremony honoring civilian contributors to military justice. The news was overwhelming for Marcus and his family. They had never imagined that his actions would lead to recognition at the highest levels of naval command. His parents were incredibly proud but also nervous about their son receiving such high-level attention. His grandfather, the World War II veteran, was moved to tears when he heard about the honor. Preparing for the trip to Washington required Marcus to learn about military protocol and formal ceremonies. Commander Rodriguez provided guidance on proper behavior during official military events, explaining the significance of different aspects of the ceremony and helping Marcus understand what would be expected of him. The week before the ceremony, Marcus received another surprise. The local veteran organizations that had initially criticized him for exposing Captain Morrison organized a send-off event to honor his upcoming recognition by the Navy. Veterans from multiple conflicts, including Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, gathered to show their support for the young man who had protected the honor of their service. During the veterans event, Marcus met many local heroes whose stories he had never heard before. These men and women shared their experiences of military service and explained how important it was to them that someone had stood up against stolen valor. Several veterans told Marcus that they had initially been upset about his exposure of Captain Morrison, but now understood that he had been protecting something sacred to them. The most moving moment of the evening came when an elderly woman approached Marcus with tears in her eyes. She introduced herself as the widow of a Navy pilot who had been killed in Vietnam. She thanked Marcus for ensuring that her husband's sacrifice, and the sacrifices of all genuine veterans, were not diminished by people like Kellerman, who falsely claimed military honors they had never earned. When the day of the Washington ceremony arrived, Marcus and his family traveled to the nation's capital. The ceremony was held at the Pentagon, in a formal conference room overlooking the Potomac River. Marcus had never been in such an important government building before, and he felt both honored and intimidated by the surroundings. The Secretary of the Navy, accompanied by several high-ranking officers, personally thanked Marcus for his service to military justice. The secretary explained that stolen valor was not just a legal issue, but a moral one that affected the integrity of military service itself. He praised Marcus's courage in coming forward despite facing criticism from his community, and his persistence in seeing the investigation through to its conclusion. During the ceremony, Marcus was presented with a special civilian recognition medal and a certificate of appreciation from the Department of the Navy. The secretary noted that it was unusual for someone so young to receive such recognition, but that Marcus's contributions had been extraordinary and deserving of special acknowledgement. The ceremony was attended by other military officials and civilians who had contributed to various Navy investigations and operations. Marcus met retired admirals, current officers, and civilian experts who worked in military intelligence and criminal investigation. These conversations helped him better understand the career opportunities that might be available to him in naval service. One of the most impressive people Marcus met was Admiral Sarah Chen, who oversaw naval intelligence operations in the Pacific region. Admiral Chen was particularly interested in Marcus's analytical methods and his ability to spot inconsistencies in military credentials. She encouraged him to consider pursuing advanced education in intelligence analysis and offered to connect him with programs that could help develop his skills further. After the formal ceremony, Marcus and his family were given a private tour of the Pentagon and briefed on various aspects of naval operations. They visited the Naval Intelligence Command Center, where Marcus saw firsthand how modern military intelligence worked. The sophisticated computer systems and global communication networks were far more advanced than anything he had imagined. The visit to Washington also included meetings with congressional representatives who were working on legislation to strengthen penalties for stolen valor crimes. Marcus was asked to provide input on how to better educate the public about recognizing fake military credentials and how to make it easier for citizens to report suspected cases of stolen valor. During these meetings, Marcus learned about the broader policy implications of his case. The Kellerman investigation had highlighted gaps in how different law enforcement agencies shared information about stolen valor cases. His work had contributed to new protocols for tracking suspected offenders across state lines and better coordination between military and civilian authorities. The recognition in Washington was covered by several news outlets, bringing national attention to Marcus's story. He appeared on television news programs and was interviewed by military magazines about his experience. While he remained somewhat uncomfortable with the publicity, he understood that his story could inspire other young people and help educate the public about stolen valor. When Marcus returned to his hometown, he was greeted as a local hero. The same community that had initially criticized him now organized a parade in his honor. The mayor presented him with a key to the city, and the school district established a scholarship fund in his name for students interested in pursuing careers in military service or law enforcement. The transformation in how his community viewed him was remarkable, but Marcus remained focused on his future goals. The recognition from the Navy had opened doors to opportunities he had never dreamed of, but it had also increased the expectations and responsibilities he would face as he began his military career. As his high school graduation approached, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed since that evening, when he first met the man claiming to be Captain Morrison. What had started as a simple act of trying to help a lost elderly man had led to a federal investigation, a criminal conviction, and recognition from the highest levels of naval command. The experience had taught Marcus valuable lessons about courage, persistence, and the importance of standing up for what is right even when it is difficult. He had learned that doing the right thing doesn't always make you popular, but it can lead to outcomes you never expected and opportunities you never imagined possible. 5 years after his commissioning, Lieutenant Marcus Thompson had established himself as one of the Navy's most promising young intelligence officers. His work in cybersecurity and counterintelligence had earned him several commendations and the respect of his colleagues. However, nothing could have prepared him for the phone call he received on a quiet Tuesday morning that would bring his career full circle in the most unexpected way. The call came from Admiral Chen, who had become Marcus's mentor since their first meeting at the Pentagon ceremony. She informed him that intelligence agencies had been tracking a sophisticated network of individuals who were using stolen military identities for espionage purposes. The network had connections to the original Kellerman case, and the Admiral wanted Marcus to lead a special investigation team. Marcus learned that Kellerman, while serving his prison sentence, had been providing information to federal investigators about other people involved in stolen valor activities. Some of these individuals were not simply seeking attention or financial gain, but were actually foreign agents using false military credentials to access sensitive facilities and information. The investigation revealed that Kellerman had been recruited by foreign intelligence operatives who saw stolen valor as an effective cover for their activities. Military veterans were often given special access to defense facilities, veteran organizations, and military social events where sensitive information might be overheard or observed. By assuming the identities of decorated veterans, foreign agents could blend into these environments without suspicion. Marcus was tasked with developing new protocols for identifying and investigating potential espionage cases involving stolen valor. His unique combination of experience with the original Kellerman case and his advanced training in intelligence analysis made him the ideal person to lead this effort. The work would require coordinating with multiple federal agencies and developing new techniques for detecting sophisticated identity theft operations. The investigation team Marcus assembled included FBI agents, military intelligence specialists, and cybersecurity experts. Together, they developed innovative methods for cross-referencing military service records with other databases to identify inconsistencies that might indicate fraudulent identities. The techniques they created were based on the same analytical approaches Marcus had used as a teenager to expose Kellerman's deception. As the investigation progressed, Marcus's team uncovered evidence of foreign agents operating in multiple states, some of whom had been active for years without detection. These individuals had used their false military credentials to gain employment with defense contractors, access to military bases, and membership in veteran organizations, where they could gather intelligence about American military capabilities and operations. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when Marcus recognized patterns in the fake credentials that were similar to those he had identified in the original Kellerman case. The foreign operatives were making the same types of mistakes in military protocol and medal arrangements that Kellerman had made, suggesting they were using the same sources for their fraudulent materials. This discovery led Marcus's team to a sophisticated counterfeiting operation that was producing fake military documents and credentials for multiple criminal and espionage networks. The operation was run by a former military clerk who had access to official forms and knowledge of military procedures, but who lacked the deep understanding of military culture and history that would have made the forgeries perfect. The investigation culminated in a coordinated series of arrests across 6 states, resulting in the capture of 12 foreign agents and the dismantling of their entire espionage network. The operation was hailed as one of the most successful counterintelligence efforts in recent years, preventing the theft of classified information about new naval technologies and military strategies. Marcus's role in the investigation earned him promotion to lieutenant commander and assignment to the Pentagon as a special advisor on counterintelligence operations. His expertise in detecting stolen valor had evolved into a broader understanding of how identity fraud could be used to threaten national security, making him a valuable asset to military intelligence leadership. The success of the espionage investigation also brought unexpected recognition to Marcus's hometown. The Navy decided to honor the community that had produced such a dedicated defender of military integrity by scheduling a special ceremony there. A convoy of Navy ships would make a rare visit to the nearest port, and high-ranking naval officers would participate in a celebration of Marcus's achievements and their impact on national security. When the announcement was made that a naval convoy would be coming to honor Marcus, the reaction in his hometown was overwhelming. The same community that had once criticized him for exposing Captain Morrison now took enormous pride in their local hero, who had risen to such heights in military service. The mayor declared a week-long celebration, and businesses throughout the town prepared special displays honoring Marcus and naval service. The ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday morning at the town's main park. the same park where Marcus had first encountered the man claiming to be Captain Morrison years earlier. The symbolism was not lost on anyone involved in planning the event. The location where Marcus's journey had begun would now be the site of his ultimate recognition by the Navy he had served so faithfully. As the day of the ceremony approached, veterans from across the region traveled to Marcus's hometown to participate in the celebration. Many of these were the same veterans who had initially criticized Marcus for exposing stolen valor, but who now understood the importance of his actions. They came to show their support and gratitude for someone who had protected the honor of their service. Marcus's parents and grandfather were invited to participate in the ceremony as honored guests. His grandfather, now in his 90s, was particularly moved by the recognition his grandson was receiving. The elderly World War II veteran had lived long enough to see his own service honored through his grandson's dedication to protecting military integrity. The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and bright, with thousands of people gathering in the park and surrounding streets. Navy personnel in dress uniforms stood at attention, while local residents, veterans, and visitors filled every available space. The atmosphere was electric with pride and anticipation as the community prepared to honor one of their own. Admiral Chen, now the Chief of Naval Operations, served as the Master of Ceremonies. She spoke about Marcus's journey from a curious teenager with a passion for military history to a decorated naval officer whose work had protected national security. She emphasized that his story demonstrated how ordinary citizens could make extraordinary contributions when they had the courage to stand up for what was right. During her speech, Admiral Chen revealed details about the espionage investigation that had not been previously disclosed to the public. She explained how Marcus's original investigation of Kellerman had provided the foundation for detecting and stopping a sophisticated foreign intelligence operation. The work that had begun with a simple letter to a local newspaper had ultimately prevented the theft of classified military secrets. The ceremony included the presentation of additional medals and commendations to Marcus, recognizing not only his initial exposure of stolen valor, but also his subsequent contributions to counterintelligence operations. The awards represented the highest honors that could be given to a naval officer of his rank, and they carried with them the promise of continued advancement in his military career. As the formal ceremony concluded, the crowd was treated to a surprise that no one had expected. The sound of ship horns echoed across the town as a convoy of Navy vessels appeared on the horizon, approaching the nearby port. The timing was perfect, as if the ships themselves were arriving to salute Marcus and his achievements. The convoy included destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels, representing the full spectrum of naval power and capability. As the ships entered the harbor, their crews stood at attention on deck in their dress uniforms, presenting a magnificent display of military precision and pride. The sight brought tears to the eyes of many veterans in the crowd who remembered their own days of naval service. Marcus stood with his family and fellow officers, watching the ships that represented the Navy he had served so faithfully. The young man who had once been called a fraud by his own community was now being honored by the most powerful Navy in the world. The journey from that park bench encounter to this moment of triumph had been long and sometimes difficult, but it had led to achievements that exceeded his wildest dreams. As the ceremony ended and the crowds began to disperse, Marcus reflected on the lessons his experience had taught him. He had learned that doing the right thing was not always popular or easy, but that it could lead to opportunities and recognition beyond anything he had imagined. He had discovered that knowledge and integrity, when combined with courage and persistence, could make a real difference in protecting the values and institutions that mattered most. Significant breakthroughs came when Marcus recognized patterns in the fake credentials that were similar to those he had identified in the original Kellerman case. The foreign operatives were making the same types of mistakes in military protocol and medal arrangements that Kellerman had made, suggesting they were using the same sources for their fraudulent materials. This discovery led Marcus's team to a sophisticated counterfeiting operation that was producing fake military documents and credentials for multiple criminal and espionage networks. The operation was run by a former military clerk who had access to official forms and knowledge of military procedures, but who lacked the deep understanding of military culture and history that would have made the forgeries perfect. The investigation culminated in a coordinated series of arrests across 6 states, resulting in the capture of 12 foreign agents and the dismantling of their entire espionage network. The operation was hailed as one of the most successful counterintelligence efforts in recent years, preventing the theft of classified information about new naval technologies and military strategies. Marcus's role in the investigation earned him promotion to lieutenant commander and assignment to the Pentagon as a special advisor on counterintelligence operations. His expertise in detecting stolen valor had evolved into a broader understanding of how identity fraud could be used to threaten national security, making him a valuable asset to military intelligence leadership. The success of the espionage investigation also brought unexpected recognition to Marcus's hometown. The Navy decided to honor the community that had produced such a dedicated defender of military integrity by scheduling a special ceremony there. A convoy of Navy ships would make a rare visit to the nearest port, and high-ranking naval officers would participate in a celebration of Marcus's achievements and their impact on national security. When the announcement was made that a naval convoy would be coming to honor Marcus, the reaction in his hometown was overwhelming. The same community that had once criticized him for exposing Captain Morrison now took enormous pride in their local hero, who had risen to such heights in military service. The mayor declared a week-long celebration, and businesses throughout the town prepared special displays honoring Marcus and naval service. The ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday morning at the town's main park, the same park where Marcus had first encountered the man claiming to be Captain Morrison years earlier. The symbolism was not lost on anyone involved in planning the event. The location where Marcus's journey had begun would now be the site of his ultimate recognition by the Navy he had served so faithfully. As the day of the ceremony approached, veterans from across the region traveled to Marcus's hometown to participate in the celebration. Many of these were the same veterans who had initially criticized Marcus for exposing stolen valor, but who now understood the importance of his actions. They came to show their support and gratitude for someone who had protected the honor of their service. Marcus's parents and grandfather were invited to participate in the ceremony as honored guests. His grandfather, now in his 90s, was particularly moved by the recognition his grandson was receiving. The elderly World War II veteran had lived long enough to see his own service honored through his grandson's dedication to protecting military integrity. The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and bright, with thousands of people gathering in the park and surrounding streets. Navy personnel in dress uniforms stood at attention, while local residents, veterans, and visitors filled every available space. The atmosphere was electric with pride and anticipation as the community prepared to honor one of their own. Admiral Chen, now the Chief of Naval Operations, served as the master of ceremonies. She spoke about Marcus's journey from a curious teenager with a passion for military history to a decorated naval officer whose work had protected national security. She emphasized that his story demonstrated how ordinary citizens could make extraordinary contributions when they had the courage to stand up for what was right. During her speech, Admiral Chen revealed details about the espionage investigation that had not been previously disclosed to the public. She explained how Marcus's original investigation of Kellerman had provided the foundation for detecting and stopping a sophisticated foreign intelligence operation. The work that had begun with a simple letter to a local newspaper had ultimately prevented the theft of classified military secrets. The ceremony included the presentation of additional medals and commendations to Marcus, recognizing not only his initial exposure of stolen valor, but also his subsequent contributions to counterintelligence operations. The awards represented the highest honors that could be given to a naval officer of his rank, and they carried with them the promise of continued advancement in his military career. As the formal ceremony concluded, the crowd was treated to a surprise that no one had expected. The sound of ship horns echoed across the town as a convoy of Navy vessels appeared on the horizon, approaching the nearby port. The timing was perfect, as if the ships themselves were arriving to salute Marcus and his achievements. The convoy included destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels, representing the full spectrum of naval power and capability. As the ships entered the harbor, their crews stood at attention on deck in their dress uniforms, presenting a magnificent display of military precision and pride. The sight brought tears to the eyes of many veterans in the crowd who remembered their own days of naval service. Marcus stood with his family and fellow officers, watching the ships that represented the Navy he had served so faithfully. The young man who had once been called a fraud by his own community was now being honored by the most powerful Navy in the world. The journey from that park bench encounter to this moment of triumph had been long and sometimes difficult, but it had led to achievements that exceeded his wildest dreams. As the ceremony ended and the crowds began to disperse, Marcus reflected on the lessons his experience had taught him. He had learned that doing the right thing was not always popular or easy, but that it could lead to opportunities and recognition beyond anything he had imagined. He had discovered that knowledge and integrity, when combined with courage and persistence, could make a real difference in protecting the values and institutions that mattered most. The story of Marcus Thompson became an inspiration to young people considering military service and to ordinary citizens who wondered whether their actions could make a difference. His journey from small-town teenager to decorated naval officer demonstrated that heroism could begin with simple acts of integrity and that standing up for what is right, even in the face of criticism, could lead to extraordinary achievements. Years later, as Admiral Marcus Thompson looked back on his distinguished career, he would always remember that everything had started with a decision to help a confused elderly man in a park. That moment of compassion and the investigation it led to had shaped not only his own life, but had also contributed to protecting the honor of military service and the security of his nation. The convoy that had honored him that day had been a symbol of the Navy's gratitude, but more importantly, it had been a reminder that every act of integrity, no matter how small it might seem at the time, has the potential to create waves of positive change that can last for generations.